There were a lot of questions today, people trying to figure out what the secret to life is, to a long and happy life. And I just wonder if you were...
But that is easy because it's so simple.
What is it?
You don't have a lot of envy, you don't have a lot of resentment, you don't overspend your income, you stay cheerful in spite of your troubles. You deal with reliable people and you do what you're supposed to do. And all these simple rules work so well to make your life better. And they're so trite.
How old were you when you figured this out?
About 7. I could tell that some of my older people were a little bonkers. I've always been able to recognize when other people were a little bonkers. And it helped me because there's so much irrationality in the world, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. Its causes and its preventions and so forth. Sure, it's helped me. And staying cheerful because it's the wise thing to do. Is that so hard?
Is there any advice you would go back and give your 20-year-old self?
I have not. Many of my children have worked out well, and I've had very little to do with it. I think they come into the world to a certain extent pre-made, and you just sit there and watch. The shy baby is a shy adult. The booming, obnoxious, domineering baby is the booming, domineering, obnoxious adult. I have never found a way to fix that. I can be cheerful about it, but I can't fix it. I can change my reaction, but I can't change the outcome. In my life, to give another example, the Mungers would have twice the assets they now have if I hadn't made one mistake of omission back in the 1970s. And really stupid. And I blew an opportunity that would have doubled my present net worth. That is a normal life. You get one or two. And how things work out, it's the basis. We all know people that are out married, but their spouses are so much better. Think what a good decision that was for them. And what a lucky decision. Way more important than money. And a lot of them did it when they were young, they stumbled into it. Now, you don't have to stumble into it. You can be very careful. A lot of people are wearing signs, danger, danger, do not touch, and people just charge right ahead. That's a mistake. Well, you can laugh, but it's still a horrible mistake. And it's been fun for the people on this board to know one another and work on these oddball things and to handle life's vicissitudes. Of course, it's very peculiar that we're so old. Imagine a place where Gary Wilcox is one of the young men. And his wife is still a golf champion, but that's not because she's good when she's old. Yeah, it's an amazing group, and that's an interesting example too. Imagine being as old and as impaired as I am, and having a pretty good time. How does that happen? Well, that is another story. I can tell a couple of other stories too, because you like stories. Here's an apocryphal story that is very instructive. A young man comes to visit Mozart. And he says, Mozart, I want to write symphonies. And Mozart says, how old are you? And the man says, I'm 23. And Mozart says, you're too young to write symphonies. And he says, but Mozart, he says, you were writing symphonies when you were 10 years old. Mozart says, yes, but I wasn't asking other people how to do it. Now there's another Mozart story. Here's the greatest musical talent maybe that ever lived. And what was his life like? Well, he was bitterly unhappy and he died young. That's the life of Mozart. What the hell did Mozart do to screw it up? make himself, well, he did two things that are guaranteed to create a lot of misery. He overspent his income scrupulously. That's number one. That is really stupid. And the other thing was he was full of jealousies and resentments. If you'll overspend your income and be full of jealousy and resentments, you can have a lousy, unhappy life and die young. All you've got to do is learn from Mozart. You can also learn from that young man who was asking Mozart how to write symphony. The truth of the matter is that not everybody can learn everything. Some people are way the hell better. And of course, no matter how hard you try, there's always some guy that achieves more, some guy or gal. And my answer is, so what? Does any of us need to be the very top of the whole world? It's ridiculous. And another thing that people do like regard as amazing is they build these enormous mausoleums. I think they figure they want people to walk by that mausoleum and say, gosh, I wish I were in there. Anyway, you can see we've had some fun as we go along. And it's worked so well. But if you actually figure out how many decisions were made in the history of the Daily Journal Corporation or the history of Berkshire Hathaway, it wasn't very many per year that were meaningful. It's a game of being there all the time and recognizing the rare opportunity when it comes and recognizing that a normal human allotment is to not have very many. Now, there's a very confident bunch of people who sell securities who act as though they've got an endless supply of wonderful opportunities. Well, those people are the equivalent of the racetrack tout. They're not even respectable. It's not a good way to live your life to pretend to know a lot of stuff you don't know and pretend to furnish you a lot of opportunities you're not furnishing. And my advice to you is avoid those people, but not if you're running a stock brokerage firm. You need them. But it's not the right way to make money. And this business of controlling the costs and living simply, and that was the secret. How much money? Warren and I had tiny little bits of money. We always underspent our incomes and we invested, and if you live long enough, you end up rich. It's not very complicated. And now there is a part of life which is, how do you scramble out of your mistakes without them costing too much? And we've done some of that too. And if you look at Berkshire Hathaway, think of its founding businesses: a doomed department store, a doomed New England textile company, and a doomed trading stamp company. Out of that came Berkshire Hathaway. Now, we handled those losing hands pretty well when we bought into them very cheaply. But of course, the success came from changing our ways and getting into the better businesses. And it isn't that we were so good at doing things that were difficult. We were good at avoiding things that were difficult, finding things that are easy. By the way, when we bought the Daily Journal, that was easy. What we're doing now in this software business is difficult. But due to the accident of these good associations and the fact that these old colleagues have lived so long, we're doing pretty well in the new business. It has potential. And it's fun to do. And how many declining newspapers have hundreds of millions of marketable securities lying around and a new business with some promise? We're like the last of the Mohegans.
That's Rich for Jerry.
Oh, he's giving it to somebody important. If you take the modern world, where people are trying to teach you how to come in and trade actively in stocks, well, I regard that as roughly equivalent to trying to induce a bunch of young people to start off on heroin. It is really stupid. And when you're already rich, to make your money by encouraging people to get rich by trading, And then there are people on the TV, another wonderful place. And they say, I have this book that will teach you how to make 300% a year. And all you have to do is pay for shipping, and I will mail it to you. How likely is it that a person who had suddenly found a way to make 300% a year will be trying to sell books on the internet to you? And it's ridiculous. And yet, I've described modern commerce. And the people who do this all day think they're useful citizens. The advertising agents that invent the lingo. And so in insurance, they say, the two people who shifted from Geico to the Glotz Insurance Company saved $400 each. What they don't tell you is there are only two such people in the whole United States, and they were both nuts. But they mislead you on purpose. And I get tired of it. And I don't think it's right that we deliberately mislead people as much as we do. Let me tell you another story that I think is an interesting one about the modern life. But this goes back to a different time. And this man has this wonderful horse. And it's just a marvelous horse. It's got an easy gait and good looking and everything. It just works wonderfully. But also occasionally just gets so he's dangerous and vicious, causes enormous damage and trouble and breaks arms and legs for his rider and so on. And he goes to the vet and says, what can I do about this horse? And the vet says, that's a very easy problem and I'm glad to help you. He says, what should I do? And the man says, the next time your horse is behaving well, sell it. Well, think of how immoral that is. And haven't I just described what private equity has to do? When private equity has to sell something that's really troublesome, they hire an investment banker. And what does the investment banker do? He makes a projection. You can't, I have never seen such expertise in my whole life as is created in making projections in investment banking. There is no business so lousy it can't get a wonderful projection. But is that a great way to make a living, to have phony projections and use it to make money out of people you look right into the eyes of? I would say no. And by and large, Warren and I, we never tried to make money out of stupidity of our dumb buyers. We tried to make money by buying. And if we were selling horse shit, we didn't want to pretend it was a cure for arthritis. And I think it's better to go through life our way instead of theirs. And I think it's always been this way. I think there's always been chicanery. Think of the carnivals, the carny operator. Think how much trickery there is in a carny operation. And people just seek out the weaknesses of their fellow man and take advantage. And you have to get wise enough so you avoid them all. And you can't avoid them if they're in your family. I have no solution to that one. But where you have a fair choice, there are just so many people that should be avoided. My father had this best friend and client. And he also had this other client who was a big blowhard. And he was always working for the big blowhard, and he wasn't ever working for his wonderful client whom I admired. And I said, why do you do this? And he said, Charlie, you idiot. He says, the big blowhard is an endless source of legal troubles. He's always in trouble, overreaching and misbehaving and so forth. Whereas Grant McFadden treats everybody right, the employees, the customers, everything. And he gets involved with some psychotic, he walks over there and makes a graceful exit immediately. So a man like that doesn't need a lawyer. And my father was trying to teach me something, and it really worked. I spent my whole life trying to be like Grant McFadden. And I want to tell you, it works.